there you go, John. Okay,
So without repeating the quote, right to public access meeting is called to order. I'm quite happy to keep notes. I just warn you guys that my notes are always pretty brief and succinct. So if someone else wants to keep more substantial notes, I will need some help.
the Zoom recording or the good notes.
Okay, so I'll keep the notes. I wanted to add
Everybody know
three
what they're
things
part-
to the agenda, which we can talk about toward the end. One is the Herring River. Second is the question of sea level rise, which I began to discuss at the last meeting. And third is the future of this committee. If all three of the thinking is, among other things, if all three of us don't show up, we don't have a meeting.
Is Barbara officially off or?
Yes.
Is that town law?
Members of the select board can't be members of a
Committee?
one of the committees.
I didn't
So
know.
she was removed right away. From the front office did that.
Okay,
There's no one here from the public, so we'll move right into our agenda. The first subject is Richmond Lane. Melissa, would you sort of tee that up for us?
Sure. So I just happened to notice that one of our shellfish access points to Chipman's Cove went on the market for a pretty high price. I reached out to a few people to see if I could somehow get us to preserve the access there. Since it's already on the market, it seems like it's a lost cause to try to make something formal, some kind of formal agreement of it. But I spoke with Nancy, and she's on it as she always is, and she's gonna have the current owners introduce her to the new owners so that we can establish a new relationship with them. And the current owners have said that they understand the situation, and they are going to explain to the best of their ability to the next owners what or how important the access is there for the community.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what else there really is to do about it other than that.
I think that's about it. I've been doing a little looking, and the kind of interesting thing is that the atlas, the town atlas, assessor's atlas, does not show the building that's the primary building on that property, which I thought was kind of interesting. But if you go to the mass mapper, it does. Confusing. I can put that up if you want. The two things that I found, let's see. I'm not exactly sure how to do this. Desktop, share, but then how do I get the other parts of the desktop? So here's the mass mapper thing, and it shows this is the main house that's being sold.
Yep.
If I go to Windows, I'm not sure which one is the, yeah, here's the town atlas, and it doesn't show those buildings at all. So I thought that was interesting. I assume the buildings are there because I can see pictures of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how updated the atlas is or how new the mansion is.
This is an aerial view, aerial view that obviously shows the building is there.
Yeah, so you can see, guys, parking is really the issue when it comes to access. And right where, yeah, exactly, right where your cursor is, there's some nice parking right there, 3 spots. And
Yeah.
it's a
Yep.
really nice point to access both the creek and the cove.
What is the building that's next to that potential parking location?
It's the Boathouse Art Gallery. I believe artists use it or maybe rent the space. But the owner, I don't know if he lives in the mansion or not, but I see him around there every once in a while with his dog.
So do you think that building is part of the sales?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
part
It
of
is
Okay.
different.
within
It is
the
different.
parcel.
Okay.
Um,
And I assume Richmond Lane is a private road.
yeah,
Yes, and not only that, but this part of Richmond Lane is not even part of the originally laid out plot plan.
Okay.
yeah,
So it's essentially a driveway.
yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And I thought maybe these two parking spaces would be on the adjoining lot, even though it's under Wellfleet Conservation Commission restrictions. Since there is a parking space there, maybe they'd let us park there, but you can't get to it anyway without going across this guy's driveway.
I'm pretty sure the existing lot is within the parcel that's being sold.
It's hard to tell. Okay, so I guess we've laid out the, let me go to one more thing here. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. That was the aerial view I just showed. Okay, maybe it's the second one here. Okay. So on this one, shows the property line and it shows the parking space, and parking space looks like it's bisected by the property line. Again, if these things are accurate. I think that's all I can show. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Oh, how do you do that? Pause share. How do you stop a share?
There's a
Stop share. Okay, got it.
There, you've done it.
Zoom Pro by now.
I assume, Melissa, that there's no, I mean, there are other ways to the water, particularly up where the old railroad crossing was. I think on both sides of that, there are ways to the water. But those are, I think also, I'm assuming your answer would be those are far enough away that they're not really convenient to this location.
You know, it's not going to be totally inaccessible to harvest from that spot, but it will be a lot more difficult.
Right.
Parking's everything.
Melissa, tell me, I can't pronounce the word, but the know-how something Heights Road, which is just south of this property.
Yeah.
It's listed as an access point, but it doesn't look like there's any public access. You're going across private property from that road. Is that the case?
Yes, it's a similar situation, but much less known and much smaller, I believe. I don't personally use it, and I think only a couple people actually do.
Doesn't look like there's any parking there.
Yeah, I think there may not be. It may be somebody who's friends with somebody who lives there, and maybe they're allowed to park there. I'm not sure.
Okay, so that's not a good alternative.
It's worth looking into. I'm not sure what the situation is, so we can, ask Nancy about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think John had mentioned earlier that it highlights just the fact that it came out of the blue.
Yeah.
Highlights our situation here, that all of these spots are really what do they say, sleeping dragons or something like that.
Now, this is a classic case that we were talking about, where so many of the access points are over private And what happens if that land gets sold? Bingo.
Exactly.
This is it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I had made one suggestion, which I build on a little bit further, that we need to publicize to the town how important these unofficial, if you like, access points are.
Mhm.
And they are particularly important to wild fishers. And I think a lot of people who come to this town know about where the public can go to get shellfish. I think they know about grants, but I think they probably don't know much about wild pickers and where they need to get to and how
Yeah.
important that is to the town.
Yeah.
And I thought that we might write to the Shellfish Advisory Board and say it would be a useful operation for our two boards to cooperate on getting that kind of publicity out, and might talk about how to go about doing that.
You're talking about out to the public,
Yes, right, out to the public.
primarily to Wellfleet residents, I assume, who might be able
Yeah,
to.
well, part of the trouble is it's not just the residents, it's summer troops as well. There are a lot of people who come and have a house by the harbor, let's say.
Mhm.
And having in the past been a summer person, generally what you're looking for is peace and quiet and a nice vacation.
You don't want people trooping past
Yeah.
or
And
over your property.
once you learn a bit about the town and how the town supports itself, you change your mind. But we ought to reach out and get people's minds changed before they object.
Okay.
That's apart from personal contact, and obviously Nancy is taking the lead on this already. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I could think of.
I think some kind of outreach to educate people on the importance of supporting our shellfishing community is important. I think it's also important to know that, you know, just contextually, a lot of the wild harvesting that most people do happens in the shoulder seasons and in the winter. And in the summer, there's actually only a handful of people that still do it. And I think that's why most summer people aren't aware of it.
Are there restrictions from the town or from somebody? Because, for instance, the area past the puddle, Silver Springs Harbor, whatever it is, somebody said that that's not used in the summertime.
Right.
Is that
The
because
areas that are open
it can't be used, or?
is closed seasonally.
Okay,
A lot of the areas are closed seasonally. There's
closed by
only
who?
a few that are open. The town, the select board ultimately decides, but the town closes and opens their areas seasonally, just to protect the fishery.
Okay,
Summer is typically a growing season, so it's important to let the oysters and all the shellfish, you know, have the opportunity to grow.
okay. I was just wondering about that.
Not to say that there aren't spots open there in the summer, because there most certainly are, but they're just many less, or many fewer, much fewer, sorry guys, and fewer people
Yeah.
actually using it.
That would be true for the fishing off of Richmond Lane.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Currently closed, the cove and the creek.
I still think it's most of our shellfishing issues, Melissa, have been about wild picking. We haven't the access to the major grant areas the Shellfish Advisory Board and the Shellfish Constable take the lead on that. So
I don't disagree.
I think it'd be just good for people in town in general to understand the issue and support it. So that's the only, as I say, that's the only positive action I can think of.
In this case, yeah, I think I agree.
Okay, so I'll put that in the minutes and
And
You
then,
think that-
and then
meet with the Shellfish Advisory Board and have a discussion about that point.
okay. What you said though about whether or not we should be looking at grant access, I think we should. I think we've already been looking at King Philip, and Heron Point Road is an access point for grants that we've also taken the initiative on, and I don't regret that.
Yeah.
Could you sit, I'll put that in the minutes. Could you send me an email of the access points you think are particularly critical, and we'll begin a discussion about it at our next meeting.
The
Okay.
grant access points, is that?
Yeah.
Okay. I know King Philip we weren't talking about because Omaha is still, in negotiations, and we wanted to settle that before we looked at King Philip. I think that other committees took the lead on Omaha because it was such a widely used and sensitive situation. But I think King Philip, nobody else is really looking into.
That's the one down at the bottom of King Philip Road
Yeah.
that goes across state property, which is another whole. mess. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of grants down in that area that could make use of that
Mhm.
if they could get vehicle access. Okay, John, are we finished with Richmond Lane?
I think so.
Is it possible to get what do you call it? Permission to go across the property? What's that called? Anyway, is it possible to get that would be seasonal? That we might have the town purchase from this new owner access right to those two little parking spaces for just, pick it, winter off season. Is that something that is ever done?
I think that's our goal in the long run, right? I think the way things are shaking out right now, it's probably not a possibility for a really long time. Usually those kinds of agreements, formal agreements, don't happen without an established relationship. But Nancy can navigate the implications and relationship there.
I was just kind of wondering if legally that ever happens, where you get permission to cross the property right away, but only seasonal. It would be nice if it could be done.
I agree. I think we need the relationship first.
Yeah.
And Nancy's in charge of that.
Okay.
But I think, Steve, that's in my mind ultimately our goal at many of these spots, right? Is to formalize these agreements.
Yes. Right. We done with Richmond Lane, John?
I was just thinking of following up. Basically, there's one other thing. There's some possibility of access toward the southwest part of Chipman's Cove that we ought to look into. So when I get that email from Melissa, I'll add that to it. Irene Payne had if you go back and look at her video, had a fairly strong argument that there was an access there. and it would need a lawyer to go see if we could find it. But we ought to consider that. And there may be another possibility by going down the edge of a conservation, not the Conservation Commission. That private organization that owns some of the land along.
Oh, yeah, Wellfleet Conservation.
Conservation Trust, that's what I'm looking for. Thank
Right.
you. They might also be willing to let us use something along the edge of their property. So
Yeah.
I'll put those on the list as well.
And the adjacent property to the Richmond Lane one that we we're just talking about is a parcel number 29 that has a house on it. And the bulk of the property is under Wellfleet Conservation Trust restrictions. And I don't know what that means. But they don't own it because it's not a separate parcel, but it's listed as Wellfleet Conservation Trust on the atlas.
Well, I'd be glad to go to one of their meetings if we identified some places that we thought were useful. And
yeah, that would be. And I don't know whether the restriction is as restricted as conservation. You were talking about, John, many meetings ago about once property goes into conservation, like the Wellfleet Conservation Commission, the trying to get rights to drive over it is about impossible. You have to go to the state or something like that.
Well, I don't know. What's interesting is the Conservation Trust bought, as you may have read, about a year ago, a fairly substantial property right along the Herring River. And the first thing they did was put in a parking place
Mm-hmm.
and a pathway. The pathway, of course, was foot pathway, not driving.
Yep.
So they must have some flexibility in what they can do. And
Well,
I'm thinking of, for example, accessing the cove. We might not be able to get a permission to drive a car right down to the edge of the cove, which would be ideal, but we might be able to create some parking.
Yeah.
With limited only to people with shellfish licenses, for example.
Well, yeah, I think that's something to be looked into. And also the licenses. There is no requirement by the shellfish department to have any kind of a tag on shellfishermen's vehicles so that they can be easily identified as shellfishermen's vehicles. Because we've talked a lot about certain areas being good for being parking for shellfishermen only, but how is that going to be enforced if there isn't some kind of a indication on the vehicle itself? And Melissa, you don't know of anything like that?
No, we definitely don't have any way of identifying the vehicle other than the shellfish department knows it. And they also have a record of all of the vehicle license plates and licenses, but for the general public to identify, just looking at someone and judging if they are a shellfisherman or not. But again, many of the vehicles that park to go shellfishing are doing so in the off season. So there's not anybody who really cares.
Yeah. Okay.
But in terms of moving forward to looking at another spot, I think we might want to create a strategy. I think the south side of the cove access point is a great one to look into, but in my mind, I see it as less needed, just because we already have a lot of access around there. Not that it's not important. We obviously want to also address it, but I think there are other spots that perhaps are one and only access points to other shellfishing sites. And we've gone through the list that Nancy and Jordan put together. And we've all prioritized our own list of what we felt was, you know, the right next move. But a general strategy for how we want to do
Yeah.
that, I think, is a good idea.
And so what
I
you're
guess I
saying,
had, but the view I had, Melissa, actually was based on some things that Sonia said. So I think we should have put together a list and then work together to prioritize it. And we shouldn't eliminate anything right from the get-go.
I think we've already made lists, you know.
Yeah, I know we keep having lists, but now we have to, we need to make one that, and then if we have a priority, we can take the top 2 or 3 and start acting on it rather than just talking about it.
Well, we all, each one of us brought 3 spots that we each wanted to prioritize a while ago. And I thought that was going to be our tackle list. And the most commonly identified spots were at the top of our group list.
did it ever get into any of the minutes, that list?
It did, yes. The most commonly identified spot by our group was the Sandy Overlook. I can't remember what it was called, but the one access point to the Herring River that doesn't require driving on the beach. And then there was also the northwest corner of Lieutenant Island. Those 2 were our most commonly identified spots.
Okay. Talking about lists, Melissa, I did spring for a license to Microsoft Excel. So I can now work on that spreadsheet. Have you done anything to it since you initially put it out?
I tried to put it all together. I haven't quite finished. I've been really busy, but I can do that before the next meeting.
Well, maybe since I have more time than you do, I'm retired. That's nice. I could take over the management of the spreadsheet, and maybe you could tell me what changes you made so that I can make them, or show me, whatever. Anyway, it's not quite on the agenda right now, but I think it kind of always is, since it is a list of access points.
Sounds good.
Lieutenant Island, which is the next, just a review of the projects there. Next step on the boathouse site on the north side of the island is the ATM vote. I was listening to the select board meeting on Tuesday. As far as I know, it's still there. Are you going to speak to it, Melissa, when it comes up? One of us should.
I'm not aware of how this works.
Okay.
What is the warrant?
What happens at a town meeting is that the moderator will move the meeting to focus on each agenda item as it comes up
Warrants?
in the warrant. And someone will have to make a motion that the warrant article be considered by the voters. And that's usually a member of the select board. And then the moderator will open it for discussion. And if Danny knows that, for example, you, Melissa, are been designated as the person from this committee to address the issue, then you get up and make a small presentation.
The warrant is just for money to survey it. Is that what I understand?
That's all. It's just it's $6,000, and you have to explain why this is important. Given that there's all sorts of controversial stuff earlier in the warrant, I think by the time we get to our item and it's only $6,000, it'll be a breeze.
Yeah,
people will be ready to go home.
Or they may have already gone home.
Or they may have already gone home. And if too many people go home, then we lose the right to continue. We have to have a certain number of voters there.
Okay.
So if that's the way it works, Melissa, if you're willing to do that, I think you've been the most involved in that particular project. I think,
Okay.
yeah, and you are a shellfisher person, so I think that would be appropriate.
Sure.
Then we get what will happen is we'll get the opinion back. We'll look at the opinion, and then we'll decide how to proceed. We may not have to get much involved in that. I think because we've asked the select board to look into the purchase once this legal issue is clarified. So I think it may be that all we have to do is make sure they understand that.
Keep poking.
The southwest corner, Audubon and the Residents Association, I assume, are thinking about implementing the plan this summer. I would like to invite both of them to our next meeting, just to be sure that the project doesn't get lost in having not been discussed over the winter.
And the plan, if I remember correctly, was a roped in area to limit cars from going
Right.
in that area, and some signage indicating how many
Right.
cars or something.
And a limited parking area. As I remember, it would hold about eight.
Yeah,
Eight
that's what I remember too.
people.
If I may, I spoke with Bill Huss, the president of the Lieutenant Highland
Right.
Homeowners Association, and he gave me a quick update on that area. He said that Conscom approved the ropes and signage, and now the ball's in the Audubon's court to go ahead and
Good.
install it. I've heard that they've been very busy getting ready for the summer season, and I'm sure it'll happen, but I'm not really sure what else there is to talk about.
Well, Audubon also plans to deal with the puddle this summer. So
In October, yeah.
mhm. In place for the October season is what I've heard
Yeah,
from.
they were talking about the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think our past communications with them have shown that they're not really interested in attending our meetings, but I know they're really busy, and I think the next step is for them to just act on what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Well, I think with respect, I'd like to hear them say that they're this one is particularly in their interests, because if we don't do this plan, you end up with cars driving on their property and hurting the marsh. So I think it would be useful, even if it's only a short portion of the next meeting, to invite both the residents organization and Audubon to make sure we're all clear about who's doing what when.
Yeah. So the open meeting law allow us to do some of this by just letters, writing to them with our concerns and getting a letter back with them telling us that they are going to do it and when.
I suppose we could. I always like to have these meetings with the people present so that if any questions or comments come up, we get it resolved right away rather than sending letters back and forth.
Yeah.
So
I agree that would be ideal. I think we've always tried to get everybody to come, but it never really happens. I've spoken with I get the sense that people prefer just a quick call or a text or an email. We can invite them, but I feel like after a million emails, yeah.
Okay, well, we can invite them. If they don't honor the invitation, we do it.
well, I'll start it off then. Take your advice with an email to the other Melissa, to Ivan, and to Bill.
Well, if I may, I've already spoken with Melissa and Bill about the puddle and the southwest corner, and I think it may be redundant.
So in other words, it's in your court, Melissa.
I mean, if you want to invite them to talk about it at a public meeting, you can. I just feel like I've already handled it, but
Okay, so what you're saying is
I think we need some sort of formal, I would prefer some sort of formal committee communication, and I'm quite happy to start this off with an email. I'll let you both review the content. And just so we get something formal back about, we have a plan. Who's going to implement it? Who's going to pay for it?
and make sure you specify in that email that you understand that Melissa has been in contact with all parties.
Fair point.
We're just trying to solidify it, get it down in writing, so to speak.
And I guess the puddle question is in fact resolved. It's in the Audubon has accepted responsibility.
Mhm.
They seem to have the funds in place. I think they understand the October season opening. So I'm not sure there's anything more for us to do about that, except to, if we're on Labor Day and nothing has happened, we maybe should speak up.
Yeah. As an aside, I've been taking pictures of the puddle at low tide and high tide.
Thank you.
And they're published on Flickr. And the interesting little story is I tried to find a high tide. I found a 12-foot high tide, happened to be at night, but it was a nice clear night with a full moon. So I walked out there. I actually bought a pair of boots, walked out there. The problem is at high tide, this is a 12-foot tide, that whole area is underwater. The water comes right up the road. And I was walking blind. I didn't know what I was going to step into. And there was a wind that was blowing the waves up over the top of my 15-inch boots. So have you ever driven home with a boot full of water? It's not much fun. Anyway, the picture is posted. And it actually came out pretty good considering it was the moon. The moon was shining over the water. I just didn't get close enough.
Future reference, Steve, if you have a real high tide at 10, 11, 12 at night, you also have the same high tide the next morning, 10, 11, 12.
No, not the same. I mean,
Not quite as high, but it's pretty impressive.
Not as high. The high tide was, at night was 12 feet, and I don't remember what the other one was, but it was 9 feet or something. Anyway, I'm waiting for a nice 12-foot tide to come during daylight. I'll take a picture again.
Thank you for doing that. The last issue on Lieutenant Island is Way 100. We talked about that. I would have to suggest at least that consider the difficulty of getting something done there, that is a pretty low priority. I can't see the Conservation Commission allowing us to use their property, which is on the hill. And I think Audubon, and it's my own opinion too, I'm not happy with the thought of people driving over salt marshes. And those salt marshes on Lieutenant Island are all at risk for climate change. They're quite low. They're open to the wind, to southwest winds. So my reaction is keep Way 100 in mind, but I wouldn't put it on I wouldn't like it on in a nearby future agenda. I think we could find other things which we could do.
Okay.
I think we agreed a long time ago that the ball was in the owner's court and the owner didn't want to fill it. So it is what it is. The only thing that we could do would be to look at alternative access. And the higher ground conservation parcel, I still believe is worth looking into. I think you had mentioned before that conservation is open to creating a parking lot somewhere else and creating access through their parcel. Then maybe it is a good idea to at least start the conversation and ask. Because it is one of the access points that provides access where we wouldn't otherwise have it.
Okay, well,
Well, I won't drop it off the list. It just
not a high priority.
there's a lot of moving pieces there.
Yeah.
Melissa, you had asked that we put onto the agenda, which I was glad to do, this question of excess sand affecting shellfishing and beach use.
I
But
think you had
I've
asked for
also,
it.
pardon? Would say
I-
Melissa?
I thought John had asked for it.
No, I asked John to put it on.
Okay,
But I'm realizing it's an issue that's really not our problem.
I agree.
It's doesn't affect access, but boy, it sure looks bad. And I don't know what the good solution is. But we've got enough problems.
okay.
And up to somebody else. So sorry, John. I should
No,
have
that's okay.
thought.
I was it's a jungle. I think the Conservation Commission is the only people who can help resolve it. They're working on this. It's a cascading problem.
Mhm.
Homeowners came along and they built houses on dunes or cliffs looking out over the harbor.
And they may have paid 4.25 million for it.
Or something like that. And then they observed to their surprise that the dunes or cliffs were being eroded. So they wanted to put up barriers to protect their houses. And
That's a bad idea.
The beach then began to erode. And so to protect the beach, they put on sand, and now we have too much sand affecting shellfish grants.
Yeah. But anyway, not our problem.
Okay, thank you. Future topics. We talked about shell fishing priorities, and we've already agreed to deal with that. I had three things I wanted to add. I've been involved in the Herring River restoration, and I just wanted to be sure that both of you knew that as the restoration proceeds, there are several upstream places which could be and should be made available for kayaking or small boating.
Access points, and, you know.
You know, access points. One of them is actually on the harbor side of the dike. That's at Fisherman's Landing, which needs some serious attention.
I haven't seen anything in the Herring River documentation that talks about that as a thing.
I just mentioned it because it's next to the Herring River.
But
In the plan, there is the possibility of, well, there isn't, it's part of the plan, a kayak landing immediately to the north of the new dike. There's also the possibility of a landing where high toss now is. High toss is going to disappear. But that has been used by kayakers both upstream and downstream. I'd like to see that continue. There has been, and this is mentioned by Echeverria, a landing at Brook Island.
mm-hmm.
And there's another practically unknown landing where Route 6 crosses the river. It's at the southwest, just southwest of that river crossing. If you turn off the road to the southwest, I haven't done this for years. There used to be a little parking area and a way down a small revetment to the water. And it's going to take a while before these become available. So I'm just, because it's going to take a while for the river to get restored. So I'm just putting these out as a record so that we keep it in mind as
I'll add them to the spreadsheet, John.
yeah.
I just had a question for you.
Go ahead.
What I do remember hearing about the Herring River project is they are expecting to put ramps for portaging kayaks over the new dike. So there'll be some kind of access point on each side, but whether they're thinking of using Fisherman's Landing as I guess that would be west side access, I don't know.
Well, if they are, it needs
A lot of work.
a lot of work, because I have driven by there at high tide and see cars sitting in the parking lot with water splashing around their wheels.
Yep.
So
There should at least be a sign up there warning people.
Right, and that's a town responsibility. It's on seashore property, but it's a town responsibility.
Okay.
One last thing I'd like to we should begin to think about is the future of this committee. We are down to 3. We have a lot to do, a lot we could do. We need to at least recruit new members. My term officially ends June 30th. And when I had first joined this committee, I thought, well, I would be on for a couple of years, then the committee would be up and running and I could step away, but we have lost some important members. So I'm thinking unless I get negative signals from home, that I'll stay on, but I'm not going to be able to stay on for more than a few months. That would leave us with no committee, because three of us can form enough to have a legal meeting. Two or not.
A quorum.
A quorum, right. So I think we all have to recruit members. I'm wondering if we should talk with Ryan, and I'd be glad to send him an email and just say, here's the problem, and please help us.
I think Ryan was the starting point for me getting on the committee. He asked Dale, don't remember his last name, and Dale asked me. So that's how I got on.
Okay.
I think it was Ryan that started that.
I think Ryan's aware that we need members. We definitely need to ask anyone and everyone. I asked Nancy to put an ad in the Shellfish Crier, so rec people and commercial people are aware.
So you're saying there was an ad in the flyer?
In the Crier, yeah.
Prior.
I also think, I've heard it's one thing for people to donate their time and energy, and it's another to do it over Zoom. When a lot of at least the shellfishermen are not Zoom savvy. It's also why SAB struggles to get members. But I spoke with someone in town hall recently, and they said that starting in June, the video productions manager, I don't know his name, he was going to be willing to facilitate a hybrid Zoom and in-person meeting for anybody who wanted it. And I think that may help to get people.
I think the hybrid, I'm glad you reminded us of that, Melissa. The hybrid proposal is a great one, because then people such as I often am are away on a holiday or vacation or a trip of some sort. As long as we have an iPad or
And internet.
with us, we can join in. But face-to-face meetings, I think, are the ideal. But I think we should keep the hybrid option so that you get the maximum participation.
And Melissa, did it sound like they're expecting someone to be able to record each of these hybrid meetings still?
I didn't discuss the topic of recording, but I imagine if you're going to Zoom anything, you can always record it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like whoever's going to do this is going to make sure that everybody can be heard, and they've already been facilitating hybrid meetings
Okay.
for other people so far.
So just the fact it's hybrid, in other words, is enough to get it recorded via the Zoom recording feature. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then along those same lines, last meeting, Barbara agreed to be the secretary. So we need a new secretary to take notes.
I think I'm the only one left, Melissa, unless you want to do it. Two of us.
However you want to do it. I'm pretty full. I've got a pretty full plate, but I'm willing to do it if nobody else can.
Let me take a try at it. I'm not a good typist, and my keyboard doesn't like the space bar, or the space bar doesn't like my thumb or something. But I can go back and watch the old recordings and put something together. They aren't going to be as good as Barbara's, perhaps. Anyway, I can try it.
Thank you.
While we think of it, the other issue is we don't have a chairperson.
Yeah.
And Melissa, are you willing to do that?
Actually, it's my turn, I think.
No, I mean permanent. I mean permanently. I'm sure you do. If you want to do it, Steve, that's fine too. I'll vote for either of you. But I think some consistent leadership is maybe now warranted and would help the committee. And you were just talking about being secretary. I was talking about leaving. So I think Melissa would be an excellent leader. If you want time to think about it, think about it. But I think that the committee needs, I think
we'll talk about it.
We'd stop going around. We'd be less likely to keep going around in circles if we had one person in charge.
I agree. Some consistency would help us. I would be happy to take the place of chair, at least until we have an established committee. And then we can figure that out from there. As I said before, I do have a lot going on, but often I feel like chair is, I don't know, I'm not experienced in this. You can tell me, John, but I feel like it's more emails and calls than it is writing. Or I don't know. Anyway, yeah, we can figure it out.
Okay.
Suppose I make a motion that appoints
Melissa is temporary.
Melissa as chair through the time of the fall town meeting, which is September, and that Steve be the secretary.
The same time
The
period.
same period.
Okay.
And then if we've managed to get some more good people on board, that group will revisit the issue.
Okay.
So that's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
We now need a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You were muted I could see that you said aye, Melissa.
Put your hand up if you're okay.
Okay. Done. Pass.
Both Melissa and Steve, thank you for agreeing to do that. I think having that consistency will help the committee, and then we can see in September where we stand. Is there any other business that either of you wish to raise before we adjourn?
Next meeting, does this committee traditionally meet through the summer?
I think we should try for once a month.
Okay.
When is town meeting?
Excuse me?
When is town meeting?
It's, let me look at a calendar. It's, I think it's June 6th.
Okay. So when we meet next, we should be done with the warrant.
It's something that's not, June 6th is a Monday, and I'm pretty sure it's a weekend.
Wellfleet Town Meeting, June 28th, oh, June 27th, June 26th. I guess they don't really know when it's gonna be.
No, it's been set.
Hmm.
Um,
I just have it down in my calendars, those 3 days. So obviously, when I put it down in the calendar, I wasn't sure what it was. And so,
I guess, I think it's actually just about a month from now. And it's a Saturday, so I think it's about the 13th or something like that. I don't dare go and
Oh, I see. It's on the 11th.
the 11th. Okay. So the question is, do we want to meet before the 11th?
I don't think so.
Then Steve, as secretary, would you take the responsibility that when we're into June, you set up a meeting date after town meeting? That would enable us, by then, I think we'll have our money for the work on the boathouse area,
Mhm.
Herring Point Road. And we could talk about how we want to go forward with that project,
Okay,
plus other things. The priorities we've talked about. So I don't see there's any need we meet before town meeting.
okay. Okay. I'll look at my tide charts. Is that the end of the meeting?
Unless either of you have something else you wish to discuss?
Melissa and I will get together offline to figure out who's going to run the spreadsheet. I think it looks like me, and you'll get your most recent changes to me. And maybe you can help me a little bit with some of the beautification that was done. I can't figure out how to have the grid lines visible when I'm looking at the spreadsheet, in spite of the fact the little box is checked. So maybe you can be my Excel mentor.
Sure, happy to.
I'll just, while it's still on my mind, I'll sit down and send you some of my my notes, which are not complete. You're probably going to have to go back and look at the recording.
Okay.
But it may help you put the minutes together.
Okay.
Okay.
And John, you sent us a landing issues for RPAC, April 20th. And I had a couple of questions on that, so I guess I'm not quite done. You talked about a Cannon Hill Beach, new local access only, and I don't know where Cannon Hill Beach is. And also, same with the old Tri Works. I can't find either one of them.
Well, Cannon Hill Beach, I can tell you where it is. It's on the up Blackfish Creek, on the north side. And it's a parcel of land that actually I helped to identify. I was looking at some of a recorder's map, and I noticed that there was this parcel of land with no ownership. So I went to the Nancy Vale, and she started the process where the town town has taken it over. It's used by local residents. It's a bit tricky to get to. Come in off Route 6. So I just think that what probably I was thinking was it should just go on our list of public access points.
Okay,
It is mentioned in Echeverria. So that's just completing a circle. And the old Tri-Works, I think that's on, it's down further south in the harbor, but I'll have to go back and remember where it was. So when I write you a note, I'll remember where it was.
okay. Thank you. And I'll add them to the spreadsheet because I don't think either one of them are there. Are they, Melissa?
No. Cannon Hill Beach might be, but I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Okay, so Cannon Hill Beach is not, I mean, there's no action needed. It just for completeness of the list.
Yeah.
And for Tri-Works, I'll have, you'll excuse, I'll have to go back and find out what I was thinking when I wrote it.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, I'll make a note about that. Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Second. Thank you all. It was a useful discussion. I think it helped clarify some of the things for the way forward. So look forward to our next meeting after town meeting.
Okay.
Melissa, if you want any help about getting ready for town meeting now, please let me know and I'll be glad to do what I can.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So take care. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Yep.
you, John.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Steve. Bye, everybody.
Bye.